I requested a vote. My name's Todd. I am a pastor. I'm a Baptist pastor. I'm a Baptist pastor of the Southern variety. And I live in flyover country. That's shorthand or longhand for Oklahoma. As a Southern Baptist pastor, recently our chief ethicist wrote an op-ed piece for the New York Times in which he suggested that the evangelicals, which all of us Southern Baptists claim to be some sort of evangelical, said that evangelicals had lowered their moral threshold by stumping for Trump. And it caused a bit of a stir because a pastor of one of the largest churches in our denomination, south of the Red River, happened to pray over Trump at his Dallas rally. And then he showed up on a YouTube video in this room with a group of preachers laying their hands on Trump, invoking the Lord's blessing in hopes that he might win the nomination. That's a great illustration for the fact that inerrancy does not solve the hermeneutical dilemma. So, my dilemma. Should I move to Southern California? I mean, after all, when you think about the weather, we're entering fall in Oklahoma, it lasts maybe a week. And then it turns right to winter. And having been in San Diego and Newport Beach and Pasadena and LA, it just seems kind of constant. And for we Okies, it's kind of boring, but it's still a constant. My wife likes it. So we're trying to figure out, would that make sense for us? Would it really be practical for us? I met Spencer Burke about 13 years ago, and we've carried on a pretty good friendship for quite some time. We've worked together on a number of projects, not Pete-like projects, but projects. And when we get together from time to time on the phone, or I'm out for a visit, he'll say, "We've got to get you out here." And I can only hear his best Bruce Willis. "Hey, come out to the coast, we'll have a party." The seed was planted, and it dies hard. That pause didn't work. And so, I started thinking, is it practical? Is it really workable for us to move to Southern California? And the answer is no. I mean, not really. Most people would think where I live that we have some things. We actually have an acreage. We live on 2.5 acres. We've got a moderately nice house. It's about 40 years old, and we kind of take care of it, intermittently, updated it haphazardly. But when I think about what Trip Fuller paid for rent in Redondo Beach, I'm like, there's no possible way. The only possible way we could move to Southern California would to be determined to be homeless. Now, homeless is, I think, underrated. I mean, I met some friends who were homeless, and I thought about the fact that, well, what would it look like if we actually opted to be homeless? Now, most of my family and friends would think we had lost our minds. They would really classify us as the majority of homeless that are out there, those who had a mental break with reality, and like my friend John, who sports his scavenged headphones and his broken MP3 while carrying his backpack in line for just a styrofoam cup of soup and a box meat, sack lunch. But they would look at me like maybe Mary and Jesus' siblings and say, "Would you get that guy out of here? He's a little bit crazy." Which would mean my parents would really care, which is a bit different than my friend David, who happens to also be on the street. His first experience with homelessness was when he was 5, and didn't last very long, and then he was permanently homeless at the age of 7, and he just celebrated his 42nd birthday, so 35 years of being homeless. But it wasn't his choice. His social network broke down. Whether it was mom or dad or both or whatever it was, he found himself in West Texas, and now he spends his days in Oklahoma. He's kind of the enforcer on the street. He's kind of the big brother on the street. He helps care for those who can't take care of themselves. He probably takes care of those who probably have experienced that mental split with reality. But he sees himself as having a role, a telos, a place. He's okay with that. He's not sure what he would do if he were to experience anything different. So maybe I'd be really not fit the category of having a loss of a social network. Why, if I really was destitute, my folks would let me move in still. We're still kind of on good terms. And I got a couple of siblings in Texas. They probably would let us come down and stay there. So it wouldn't be like I had a mental break, and it wouldn't be like I lost my social network. But then I met this philosopher. He's a diminutive fellow. He doesn't dress in the normal academic garb. His name's Gary. Gary's homeless. But Gary didn't have a mental break. He didn't have a mental split. He doesn't appear to have really had any kind of loss of his social network. Instead, Gary chose homelessness. See, most people, when we talk about homelessness, homelessness chooses a person, and Gary, he chose homelessness. Standing out in front of an old church, serving food and giving out new sets of old clothes to a new owner, standing in the parking lot, and he waxes on about Putin and politics and how he spends his day in a local community college or at the local library on the internet engaging expat Russians or those still living there in Russian, not your average homeless vocabulary. No, he could sit there and really get deeply philosophical about the comparisons between Bill Cosby and Woody Allen and the current understanding of how we kind of work through those particularities of the male-female gendered relationships. Gary. He chose homelessness. And it was most telling when we started kind of exploring about his options for a job and maybe what he could go do for a living. And he said, "You want me to have a job? You give me a job. I don't need a job. The system needs me to have a job. I don't need a job. In fact, if you give me a job, then don't pay me slacker's wages. You pay me a livable wage doing something I enjoy doing." But that's not going to happen, so I'm fine right where I am. Just call me a wandering philosopher who's protesting the system. Yeah, that haunted me. It still haunts me, pastoring a church. Built a couple of buildings. We're not a mega church. We're not a big church, maybe a couple hundred people. And I keep thinking about paying the mortgage on a building and what we could do with that indebtedness and how we could help the homeless. And I think, well, maybe really the issue is, could we adopt a homeless posture? In other words, could we really build a community that is in protest of the system? Could we really not worry so much as someone says, that church has lost its mind? Or that church has become disconnected with its denominational moorings. It doesn't really look the part. Maybe we could say, oh, we'll actually opt for homelessness. We'll choose it. It'll be our living protest. We Christians really do a lot of theoretical protests, but I wonder if we could build communities that actually had material protests. You really, really did something on the ground. We didn't blog about it, talk about it, write articles about it, but we found ways in which we could say, got no boat, I've got no home. But we are going to opt for homelessness for the good of, well, our friends. Our friends who don't look like us, who don't choose like us, who don't opt for our way of living. So, I still got this dilemma. Oklahoma or Southern California. Can't afford to move. So maybe we'll go back after hearing kind of what I've heard here. just opt for a community that chooses homelessness. Are you with me?